I have a confession to make.
Oh,
I started my day in a place I usually try to avoid, but I couldn't help myself. I was doom scrolling through Reddit.
the siren song of the infinite scroll. I know it well.
You know how it is, you go in for 5 minutes to check, I don't know, the news, and an hour later you're reading about 17th century bread-making techniques.
Or watching videos of otters holding hands. It's a dangerous place.
It is. But this morning, I stumbled into a community called Neuter Reddit.
Neuter Reddit. That sounds like a very polite, very confused corner of the internet.
It is essentially a triage center for people who have absolutely no idea how the internet works. It's charming, in a way.
I can imagine. Lots of questions about what an upvote is.
Exactly that. But I found a thread that just stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't about cats. It wasn't a political argument. These users were baffled, completely and utterly baffled by one specific thing: karma.
Ah, yes. The digital scoreboard. The little number next to your name that tells you if you're a good internet citizen.
Right. But here's the thing that got me. I've been on Reddit for years. I thought I knew how it worked. You say something funny or insightful, someone clicks the up arrow, you get a point.
And you say something that people don't like, they click the down arrow, you lose a point.
Simple math.
Yeah.
1 to 1. Input equals output.
That is the assumption. It's how video games work. It's how sports work. You score a goal, you get a point. Input A leads to result B.
Right. But I was reading this guide on that subreddit from a user named Squid50s, which, great name, by the way.
Fantastic name.
And it turns out we are living a lie.
Ah, this is a conspiracy I can get behind.
The guide explicitly says, and I'm quoting here, karma isn't 1.1.
Really?
Yes. If you post a meme and it gets, say, 10,000 upvotes, you do not get 10,000 karma points added to your profile.
So it's not a direct tally.
Not at all. The source material says the algorithm's actually top secret, but it functions like a progressive tax system.
A progressive tax. That's a fascinating choice of words. So the more popular you get, the less valuable your popularity becomes.
Exactly. It's a law of diminishing returns. The first few upvotes might count as a full point each, but once a post goes viral, the algorithm starts shaving off the value.
So the 1,000th upvote is worth less than the 10th upvote.
Maybe it's only worth half a point. Maybe the 10,000th is worth a fraction of fraction. Nobody knows the exact formula.
That is surprisingly sophisticated. It almost sounds like an anti-inflation measure for social credit.
How do you mean?
Well, think about it. If every upvote on every viral post counted as one full point, you'd have users with hundreds of millions of karma points. The currency would be worthless.
Oh, I see.
So they're artificially creating scarcity to give the points some kind of perceived value.
And that scarcity is driving people crazy. The sources show users obsessing over this number. There's this one user, Chuckaruckus, who coined a term that I absolutely love.
Go on.
He calls it the e-karmamy, the karma economy.
E-karmami, that's brilliant.
It sounds like something out of a dystopian novel, right? These users feel like they're being taxed by the admins. They feel cheated out of their points.
Because they're expecting a simple linear system, but they're dealing with a complex weighted algorithm.
And then you have the fear of the negative. People are terrified, legitimately terrified of their number going below zero. They're asking in these threads if having negative karma makes them a troll or some kind of social pariah.
Wow, so it stops being a silly internet game and starts feeling like a credit score.
Oh, social credit score, exactly. And there was one comment that just, it summed up the whole absurdity of it for me. A user asked about these free karma subreddits.
Free karma.
Yeah, apparently they're places where you just post nonsense and everyone upvotes each other so you can bypass posting restrictions in other communities that have karma minimums.
Okay, that's already a weird concept.
Right. But another user replied, asking if going to these free karma subs was like, and this is a quote, interacting with NPCs for XP.
NPCs for XP. Non-player characters for experience points. That is a brilliant, if slightly depressing, analogy. You're just grinding for social credit with soulless bots in order to level up your account. It frames human interaction as a purely transactional, mechanical process.
And that's what got me thinking. We are obsessing over these points. We're farming them. We are terrified of losing them. But we're borrowing this word karma that has a multi-millennial history.
A very deep, very complex history.
Right. And looking at how confused these Redditors are, I realized I don't actually know if the Reddit algorithm has anything to do with the actual historical concept of karma.
Well, it's a classic case of a deep philosophical concept being flattened into a gamified metric. But you're right to pause there.
Because the real thing is more complicated.
The gap between Reddit karma and karma in the religious and historical sense is massive.
Right.
And if we look at the research we have today, that progressive tax on Reddit is actually the simplest version of the story. The real history is infinitely more complex, more nuanced, and frankly, more interesting.
And that is what I want to do today. I want to leave the subreddit behind and go to the source material.
Good, let's do it.
We have a stack of research here that spans thousands of years. We're talking about cosmic dust and sticky souls and agricultural farming metaphors.
And even, believe it or not, weapons that turn around in midair to hit the person who threw them.
It's a huge topic.
It is. We are going to peel back the layers of cause and effect. It's a journey that takes us from that digital scoreboard all the way back to the ancient philosophies of India, Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism, Buddhism.
And that's just the start.
It is. We aren't stopping there. We're going to look at how these ideas cross paths with Islamic mysticism and Sufism. We'll contrast it to the Chinese concept of the Tao. And finally, we're going to pivot to the West, or rather, the ancient Near East, to look at the Bible's version of this, which we might call poetic justice.
It's a global tour of consequences.
Precisely. We're exploring this fundamental human need to believe that things balance out, that there is a mechanism, whether it's an algorithm, a law of physics, or a divine judge, that ensures the output eventually equals the input.
So let's unpack this. Where do we even begin? I think we have to start with the origin.
The origin is the right place. When you say karma to the average person on the street, what do you think they say?
They usually just say what goes around comes around.
Right. It's the boomerang effect.
Yeah.
And that's, well, it's a simplification, a massive one.
It's the pop culture version.
It is. One of the key papers we're looking at today is titled Karma in Asian Religions by Melanie Patricia Nambiar. And she makes a very important distinction right off the bat. The word karma itself, etymologically, doesn't mean fate, and it doesn't mean justice.
Okay, so what does it mean?
It comes from Sanskrit, and it fundamentally means deed, action, or sometimes intent.
Action.
Okay.
So it's not the result. It's the thing you do.
Yeah.
The cause, not the effect.
Correct. It is the act itself. But the misconception we have in the West, and clearly on Reddit, is that karma is a uniform theory. We assume everyone in Asia views it the same way.
Which they don't.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Nambiar's research shows that the mechanics, how the engine of karma actually works, varies wildly depending on which tradition you are standing in.
So let's walk through them. I think Hinduism is probably the biggest one people associate with the term. How does the engine work there?
Okay, so for Hinduism, you have to shift your thinking. Don't think of a judge. Don't think of a cosmic accountant with a ledger book.
No guy with a white beard and a gavel.
None of that. Think of physics. Karma, in the mainstream Hindu view, is a law of nature, just like gravity.
Gravity.
If you drop a ball, it falls. The ball isn't being punished by the floor for being clumsy. It's just gravity.
It's an impersonal force.
Exactly. If you perform an action, it creates a reaction. The source material notes that the gods generally don't interfere with this. It is a system that runs on its own power.
So it's just moral physics. But it can't be that simple, can it? I mean, sometimes good people suffer and bad people prosper. How does moral physics account for that?
Right, and that's the central problem, isn't it? And this is where it gets really technical and, frankly, a little terrifying. The Hindu texts categorize this physics into 3 distinct buckets, and understanding these buckets is the key to explaining why bad things can happen to good people.
I saw this in the notes. This is the difference between what's happening now and the backlog.
Yes, exactly. The backlog. To visualize this, the Vedantic texts often use the analogy of an archer. Imagine you are an archer with a bow and a quiver full of arrows.
Okay, I'm the archer. I've got my bow.
The first type of karma is called prarabdha karma.
Pravda.
This represents the arrow that you have already shot. It has left the bow. It is in the air, flying towards its target. You cannot stop it. You cannot call it back. You can't change its path.
And in my life, what is that arrow?
That is your current reality. It's the body you were born into, the family you have, your genetic predispositions, the immediate circumstances of your life, both good and bad. That is the momentum of past actions playing out right now.
So the things I can't change.
The things you have to endure until that arrow hits its target. That's why you can't just positive think your way out of certain situations. The arrow is already flying.
That makes a strange kind of sense.
Right.
It explains the parts of life that feel predetermined. Okay, so that's the arrow in the air. What's next?
Next, you have the second type, Kriyamana.
Kriyamana.
This is the arrow you are holding in your hand right now. You are knocking it on the string. You are aiming it. This represents your free will in the present moment.
My current actions.
Your current actions, your intentions, your choices. You can choose where to aim, how much force to use, or whether to shoot at all. This is you creating your future.
Okay, so I have some agency. I'm not just a robot playing out a script. I'm actively aiming the next arrow.
You are. You have complete control over Kriyamana. But then there is the quiver on your back.
The quiver.
This is the third type, and this is the one that keeps people up at night. This is Sanchita Karma.
And Sanchita's the backlog.
It's the massive backlog. It is the accumulated bundle of all the arrows from all your past lives, thousands of them, maybe millions, that you haven't fired yet. They are just sitting there in the quiver waiting to be chosen.
Wait, so I have a cosmic debt?
Yeah.
Or a credit?
Both. It's a vast collection of unresolved causes. Think of it like a dormant volcano. Or, to use a financial analogy, it's a massive inherited investment portfolio. You don't know what's in it, but at some point, those stocks are going to mature.
That is terrifying.
It is.
So I could be walking around having a great day, aiming my current Kriyamana arrow perfectly, doing everything right, and then an arrow from my Sanchita quiver just gets loaded onto my bow, and I have to deal with it.
Theoretically, yes. Your Sanchita determines your future births, your character, your innate talents, and your suffering. It explains why a seemingly innocent child might be born into hardship. The Hindu explanation is that their Sanchita is ripening.
So what is the goal then? On Reddit, the goal is to get the high score. Is the goal in Hinduism to get good karma, to fill the quiver with, like, golden arrows?
Actually, no. And this is probably the biggest misunderstanding in the West. The ultimate goal in Hinduism is not good karma. It's moksha, which means liberation.
Liberation from what?
From the whole system. You don't want good karma or bad karma. You want no karma.
Do you want to go bankrupt? You want to empty the quiver?
In a sense, yes. If you have good karma, that's great. You might be born as a king or a wealthy merchant or even a celestial being in a heavenly realm, but you are still born.
You're still in the game.
You're still trapped in samsara, the cycle of rebirth. You are still on the cosmic wheel going round and round. The goal is to get off the wheel entirely. You want to deplete the Sanchita account to zero so you can retire from existence.
It's like a bank account you're trying to empty out so you can close it and walk away from the bank forever.
Precisely. You want to close the account. Good karma just gives you a nicer prison cell. Liberation means walking out of the prison.
Wow. Okay. That completely reframes it. Now, if you think the Hindu model of moral physics is interesting, you have to look at Jainism. Because if Hinduism is physics, Jainism is, well, it's almost biology. It gets gritty.
Oh, yeah, it gets very physical.
This is the part of the research that really stuck with me, pun intended. The source mentions karmic dirt.
Yes. In Jainism, karma is not an abstract force or a law. It is a physical substance. The source describes it as microscopic matter, a kind of subtle dust that pervades the entire universe. It's everywhere, all the time.
So a bad deed isn't just a mark on a ledger, it's actual filth that gets on you.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Your soul, which Jains call the jiva, is naturally pure, light, and buoyant. Its natural state is to float to the very top of the universe, to a place of eternal bliss.
Okay, like a helium balloon.
A perfect analogy. But this karmic dust, this physical substance, is heavy, and it sticks to the soul and weighs it down, trapping it in the cycle of rebirth.
How does it stick? Is it just bad luck, like walking through a cloud of pollen?
No, there's a specific mechanism. The source explains that the soul attracts this dust through vibration.
Vibration.
When you act with passion, anger, greed, ego, deceit, your soul vibrates. These passions create a kind of spiritual turbulence around you.
Like a wet dog shaking.
Or like a magnetic field being switched on. Or, to use a simpler image from the texts, imagine your soul is a pristine white cloth. When you have these passions, you make the cloth wet and sticky.
I see where this is going.
So as you move through this dusty universe, the dirt just clings to that sticky cloth. The more passionate your actions, the stickier the cloth, the more karmic gunk you accumulate.
That is such a visceral image. It's not just a record in a book. It's gunk clogging up your soul.
And it gets even deeper. The source says this dust is attracted by vibrations caused not only by physical deeds and mental deeds, but, and this is key, by thoughts.
Just thought. So if I just think about punching someone in traffic, I'm vibrating. I'm attracting dust.
Yes. The mental vibration is enough to make the soul sticky. Even if you don't throw the punch, The internal anger has already coated your soul in a fine layer of karmic matter.
That seems incredibly difficult to manage. I mean, who can control every single thought? How do you clean it off?
Well, the goal is not so much to clean it off after the fact, but to stop it from sticking in the first place. To avoid accumulating this dust, Jains follow what they call the triple gems of rationality. Rationality in thoughts, perception, and conduct.
So you have to keep the soul smooth and dry, metaphorically speaking.
Exactly, so the dust just slips off. It requires constant mindfulness. There was a story in the source about a woman named Mara Devi. I think this illustrates the power of thought perfectly.
Ah, yes, Maro Devi. She was the mother of a very important figure, right?
The mother of Rishabha, the very first Tirthankara, basically a founding enlightened being in Jainism. The story goes that she was old and was visiting her son, who had achieved enlightenment. She was riding on an elephant, coming to see his glory and his great assembly of followers.
And she reached emancipation right there on the elephant. How?
She did, but not because of any ritual or action. As she looked upon her son and his magnificence, she had a moment of profound insight. She realized the vanity of her own worldly attachments and her pride as a mother.
It was a mental shift.
A complete mental transformation.
Yeah.
In that single moment of pure, detached thought, she shed all her remaining karmic dust instantly. Her soul became so light that it ascended to liberation right then and there.
She didn't have to go do a bunch of charity work. She just fixed her thinking.
She dried the cloth, she stopped the vibration. It highlights how intensely internal the Jain process is. You can do good deeds all day, but if you are doing them with a sticky, ego-filled mind,
Yeah.
you're just collecting more and more dust.
And again, like Hinduism, there's no God managing this.
It's a self-nourishing apparatus, a machine of cosmic physics and biology that runs itself.
Which brings us to Sikhism, because the source material suggests they view this very, very differently. They have a completely different metaphor.
They do. If Jainism is about dust, Sikhism is about agriculture. The source uses the analogy of the field. Life is a field, and karma are the seeds you plant.
You reap what you sow.
Literally. That phrase could be the subtitle for the Sikh view of karma. But there's a massive theological shift here.
What's the shift?
In Hinduism and Jainism, the law is impersonal. It's gravity, it's physics. In Sikhism, there is a supreme being. This whole system of sowing and reaping is part of the divine law, known as hukam.
So there's a manager of the farm.
A manager of the farm, exactly. God is the creator and the destroyer of karma.
So you aren't just dealing with a machine. You're dealing with a person,
Yeah.
a consciousness.
A consciousness who can intervene. And this changes everything, because if there is a manager, there is room for grace. In Sikhism, you can't just work your way out of the field by planting enough good seeds. You need Nadar divine grace.
So your own efforts aren't enough.
They're necessary, but not sufficient. You plant the seeds of good deeds, but it is God's grace that makes them sprout. The manager can forgive your karmic debt.
The source also points at a huge social difference here, especially regarding the caste system in India.
Yes, this is absolutely critical to understanding the Sikh perspective. Historically, in India, the concept of karma was sometimes used to justify the caste system.
Right. If you were born poor or as an untouchable, it was because you had bad sanchita karma from a past life. You deserved your station.
It's a brutal way to view poverty and social hierarchy. It essentially blames the victim for their circumstances across lifetimes,
But Sikhism rejects that.
explicitly and forcefully. The source notes that the Sikh gurus taught that past deeds do not determine your status at birth in the eyes of God. Only your good deeds in the present life endure and have value.
That is a huge social pivot. It takes the weaponization of karma out of the equation.
Completely. It democratizes salvation. It says it doesn't matter what your karmic backlog is or what family you were born into. If you plant good seeds now and you align with the hukam, you can be saved. It levels the entire playing field.
I like the field analogy. It feels very practical, grounded. But then we get to Buddhism, and the source material basically warns us. Do not think in straight lines.
Buddhism is the master of complexity here. It takes the linear cause and effect model and twists it. The source warns against the linear view, the simple idea that past causes present and present causes future.
Which seems completely logical. Why isn't it linear? What's wrong with that?
Because reality is more like a web than a line. The Buddhist view, especially in Mahayana traditions, is that the present is shaped by the past. Yes, that's true. But the present is also shaped by the present.
Okay, run that by me again. How can the present shape the present?
Think of it this way. You're standing in a river. The water hitting your legs is the past. It's flowing from upstream. You can't stop it. That's your past karma ripening.
Okay.
But how you stand in that river, how you brace yourself, how you react to the current that is happening right now in the present, and your reaction in this moment changes the flow for the person downstream who is your future self.
So the current moment has its own causal power.
Immense power. If karma were a simple straight line, you would be a slave to your past. You would just be a puppet playing out a script written by your past actions. You'd have no real freedom.
Just be enduring the arrows that were already shot.
Exactly. But because the current mind, your intention right now, has agency, you can interrupt the signal. You can change the pattern.
You can cut the strings of the puppet.
That's a great way to put it. You aren't just a passive recipient of your past. Your present intention is a co-creator of your reality. The Source calls karmic actions the engine that drives the cycle of rebirth, but understanding the process gives you the key to turn the engine off.
And like Jainism, it's non-theistic.
Right. No creator judging you. It's a natural, dynamic flux of causes and conditions.
Before we leave this whole section on Asian religions, we have to talk about Falun Gong. The source had some very specific, very unique details about their view of karma that I hadn't heard before.
Yes, this is a much more modern religious movement emerging in the 1990s in China, but it draws on these ancient terms from Buddhism and Taoism.
And the source notes that in Falun Gong, karma is viewed exclusively as a black, negative substance.
That's a key distinction. In Buddhism, you can have good, bad, or neutral karma. But in Falun Gong, the word karma itself specifically refers to this black substance that causes all disease and suffering.
So there's no such thing as good karma.
They acknowledge a corresponding white substance called virtue, or day, which you gain from doing good deeds. But karma is the bad stuff. And here's the twist. Suffering is seen as the primary way to pay it off.
Suffering as currency. That sounds heavy.
It has some very serious real-world implications. The source we looked at mentions a teaching that discourages using medicine during illness.
Why would do that?
Well, the logic, and again, we are simply reporting what the source material here says, is that an illness is a test. It's an opportunity to burn off that black karmic substance.
So you take an aspirin for a headache, you're cheating the test.
The view described is that if you take medicine, you are essentially pressing pause on the elimination of that karma. You're pushing the black substance back deeper into the body rather than allowing it to be burned off through the process of suffering.
Wow. That completely reframes being sick from something is wrong with my body to something is happening that needs to happen for my soul.
It creates a very different relationship with pain. Instead of seeing pain as a malfunction to be fixed, it can be viewed as a purification process, a necessary fire.
So just to recap the East before we move on, because that was a lot.
It was.
We have the natural law of Hinduism with its 3 kinds of arrows.
Okay.
We have the sticky karmic dust of Jainism, which I think is going to stick with me for a while.
We have the agricultural field of Sikhism managed by a divine hand. We have the complex, nonlinear web of Buddhism, where the present moment is incredibly powerful.
And the exclusively black substance of Falun Gong, burned away by suffering. It is just amazing how one single word karma can wear so many different masks.
And we haven't even touched the Middle East yet.
Right. That's where it gets really interesting for me. Because usually we keep these worlds separate in our minds. We have Eastern religions and Western Abrahamic religions in 2 different boxes.
We do.
But the source material on Sufism, this mystical branch of Islam, shows that there was a massive, well, a collision of ideas.
Collision might be too violent a word, perhaps a synthesis, a conversation. The paper, Karma, Reincarnation, and Avatarvada in Indian Sufism by Ghulam Rasul Delvi is fascinating.
What does it show?
It paints this vivid picture of medieval India where Sufi mystics were literally rubbing shoulders with Hindu yogis and Buddhist monks. They were hanging out in the same khankahs or lodges, drinking tea and swapping theology.
But wait, that seems impossible. Islam has a very linear timeline, right?
Yeah.
You were born, you live your life, you die, there's a day of judgment, and then heaven or hell. End of story. No coming back.
Correct. Mainstream Orthodox Islam absolutely rejects reincarnation, which is known as tanasuk. The timeline is strictly linear. You get one shot.
So how did they even find common ground?
The Sufis. Well, the Sufis are the mystics. They're always looking for the internal, esoteric meaning behind the external rules. And when they encountered the incredibly rich philosophical landscape of India, they started finding bridges. They found parallel concepts.
What kind of bridges? Give me an example.
Well, take the concept of karma itself. Islam has a concept called amal, which means actions or deeds. And it has qadar, or divine decree. And the Quran says in a very famous passage, so whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it, and whoever does an atom's weight of evil will see it.
An atom's weight. That sounds a lot like karma, that level of precision.
It functions very similarly. Your actions have precise and unavoidable consequences. But the distinction is vital. As we said, karma is often seen as an impersonal law of the cosmos. Amal is judged by a personal, conscious God. It is relational.
It's a conversation with the divine, not just a physical law.
Exactly. However, the Sufis, in their poetry and their teachings, started using language that sounded very familiar to their Hindu neighbors to explain the soul's long journey.
And this is where that famous poem by Rumi comes in. I feel like I've seen it on Instagram a million times. People love it. I died as mineral and became plant.
I died as plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and I was man. Yes. It's a breathtaking piece of mystical literature.
But it sounds exactly like evolution or reincarnation. It sounds like he's saying, first I was a rock, then I died and was reborn as a tree, then I died and was reborn as a goat.
It does sound that way, and modern perennialists, people who believe all religions teach the same core universal truth, absolutely love to cite this poem as proof that Rumi believed in reincarnation.
But he didn't.
Well, the expert in me has to pump the brakes. Most Sufi scholars and historians of religion would disagree with that literal interpretation.
Okay, ruin the inspirational Instagram caption for her. What was Rumi actually saying?
They would argue that he's describing a spiritual ascent, not a literal jumping of bodies on earth. It's a ladder of consciousness.
A ladder. Explain that.
The soul begins its journey with the awareness of a mineral heavy, dormant, asleep, completely submitted to God's will but unconscious of it.
Okay, the lowest rung.
Through God's grace, it evolves to the awareness of a plant. It has growth, it seeks light, but it's still rooted and passive. Then it ascends to an animal, it has movement, desires, feelings, it's driven by instinct.
M into human.
And finally to a human capable of reason, self-awareness, and most importantly, divine love. And for Rumi, the latter doesn't even stop there. He says after human, he will become an angel, and after that, something beyond imagining.
So it's a spiral of growth within the soul's single journey toward God, not necessarily dying and being born as a turnip.
Exactly. The source calls it a spiral, not a closed circle. It echoes the Indian idea of spiritual growth and evolution, but it keeps it within the Islamic framework of a singular soul journeying toward the divine. It's a masterful synthesis.
There's another concept in that Sufism source that I found really clever, a theological workaround almost. The perfect human.
Ah, yes, Insan al-Kamil. This is a brilliant example of how they bridge the gap with the Hindu concept of the avatar.
Right, because in Hinduism, God can come down to earth. Vishnu comes down as Rama or Krishna. That's an avatar, a divine incarnation.
And in Islam, that is a strict, absolute no-go. God is utterly transcendent. God does not take physical form. That would be shirk associating partners with God. It's the biggest sin in Islam.
So you have a problem. The Hindus have these beloved divine figures you can have a personal relationship with. What do the Sufis do?
They saw the intense devotion, the bhakti that Hindus felt for Krishna, and they developed, or at least heavily emphasized, the concept of the perfect human.
How is that different from an avatar?
The perfect human isn't God in the flesh. The perfect human is a mirror, a perfectly polished mirror.
A mirror.
The idea is that the human heart is like a mirror. In most people, it's covered in the rust and dust of ego, sin, and distraction. But if you, through spiritual practice, manage to polish that mirror perfectly,
It reflects the light.
it reflects the divine attributes so clearly, so perfectly, that when you look at that person, it's as if you are seeing God. But the mirror remains the mirror. The reflection is the sun, but the mirror itself is just polished glass.
That is a beautiful compromise. It's so elegant.
It is. It keeps the theology clean and distinct, but it allows for that intense personal connection, that devotion to a spiritual master. It functions like an avatar for the devotee, a focus for love and guidance, while maintaining the theological separation between creator and creation.
It's a brilliant example of how religions can adapt and borrow from each other while staying true to their core principles.
Absolutely.
So we've seen the counting of deeds in India, the weighing of atoms in Islam. But then we have to go further east to China. And the Taoists seem to think we are all trying way too hard with all this counting and weighing.
The Taoists are the ones sitting by the river, watching the rest of us frantically count our karma points and our atoms, and just gently shaking their heads.
The source material on the Tao of the Way describes it as nameless, formless, and like water.
Water is the ultimate Taoist metaphor. And the source emphasizes this contrast perfectly. If karma, in all its forms, is a kind of tally ledger of debits and credits, Taoism is about wu wei.
Wu-wei. That translates as non-action, right?
Yeah.
Which sounds a bit lazy.
It's often translated that way, but effortless action is probably better. And you shouldn't mistake it for laziness or passivity. Think about the action of water.
Okay.
Water doesn't try to flow downhill. It doesn't strive to reach the ocean. It just follows the natural contours of the land, the path of least resistance.
Yet it's powerful enough to carve the Grand Canyon.
Exactly. It's soft and yielding, yet it overcomes the hard and rigid. That is wu wei. It's acting in harmony with the natural flow of things, rather than struggling against it.
So in the context of justice or consequence, how does that work? Karma says you did X, so Y will happen to you. What does the Tao say?
The Tao says align yourself with the flow. If you try to swim upstream against a powerful current, you'll exhaust yourself and drown. That is the natural consequence. If you swim with the current, you'll travel far with little effort. It's less about judgment and more about alignment.
And there's this related concept of DE.
Yes, D. It's often translated as virtue, but a more literal sense is power or potency. It's the inherent quality of a thing when it's aligned with the Tao.
So it's the active living of the way.
It's what happens when you're in the zone, when you're not forcing things. It's the virtue of the water being wet, the virtue of the tree growing towards the sun. It's your own inner nature flourishing.
The source mentioned something fascinating about language here. It said that when Buddhism first came to China from India, they didn't just translate the Indian Sanskrit words directly, these Taoist words.
This is a crucial piece of religious and linguistic history. Imagine you're a Buddhist missionary in 2nd century China. How do you explain a complex Indian concept like dharma or sunyata, emptiness, to a Chinese audience who has never heard of it?
You have to use words they already understand.
Exactly. You find the closest local equivalent. So the Buddhist concept of emptiness became equated with the Tao. The path of the Dharma became the Tao. The Indian practice of dhyana meditation became Chan.
And Chan eventually traveled to Japan and became Zen.
Correct. So Zen Buddhism, as we know it, is basically a child of this marriage between Indian Buddhism and Chinese Taoism. It carries the DNA of both traditions.
And the word Tao itself physically means road. Right.
Yes, the character literally depicts a path or a road. It implies movement, a journey, a cosmic trek. It's not a static law book, it's a flowing, dynamic journey.
I love that image. But I want to pivot now because we've been very philosophical. We've talked about cosmic dust and polished mirrors and flowing rivers. But sometimes, you just want to see the bad guy step on a rake.
Sideshow Bob moment of cosmic justice.
Exactly. We want instant karma. We want to see the consequences happen right now. And when we look at the Western tradition, specifically the Bible and the ancient Near East, the source material shows us that they had a very specific, very violent, and very satisfying way of picturing justice.
This is the Poetic Justice section, based on the fantastic paper by Murray Lichtenstein. And you are right, the imagery shifts dramatically. We are no longer talking about future lives or spiritual ladders. We're talking about pits, nets, and traps.
The source calls it the image of the entrapped trapper.
It is a favorite recurring trope in the wisdom literature of the Hebrew Bible Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. He dug a pit and hollowed it out. May he fall into the very pit he made.
It appears everywhere. Psalm 7, Proverbs 26. One who rolls a stone, it returns back to him. It's so direct.
It is. It's the Wile E. Coyote effect, elevated to divine law. But in the ancient world, this wasn't a cartoon. The imagery is very specific to the hunting and warfare technology of the time. The source mentions the pit, shahat, and the net, rishat.
Okay, can we talk about the mechanics of this? Because it's not just a general bad things happen to bad people.
No, it's far more precise than that. In the movies, the villain digs a deep hole and covers it with leaves to trap the hero.
And then gets chased and forgets where it is.
And falls into his own trap. That is exactly what the ancient imagery evokes. The source points out that this is exact retribution. You are punished by the very instrument you created to harm others.
It's not just that you dug a hole and later in life you got the flu. It's you dug a hole and you fell in that specific hole.
Precisely. The punishment fits the crime because the punishment is the crime, just reversed back on its creator. The source draws parallels to hunting. The wicked are portrayed as hunters lying in ambush for the righteous. They think they are the predator. But the mechanism of poetic justice turns them into the prey of their own strategy.
There was a specific example from Shakespeare in the source that showed how this idea endured.
Yes, from Hamlet. Laertes is wounded by his own poisoned sword and says, I am justly killed with mine own treachery, and earlier, as a woodcock to mine own springe.
A springe is a type of trap.
Right? A snare for birds. It perfectly captures the essence of the biblical trope. You are caught in your own device.
And then the imagery gets even more kinetic. There's the recoiling weapon. This one feels even more cinematic.
This moves from static traps like pits and nets to dynamic kinetic weapons. Arrows, swords, sling stones. The source analyzes ancient Near Eastern texts, not just from Israel, but Akkadian and Mesopotamian texts, where gods or even demons are depicted as literally reversing weapons in midair.
Like in the superhero movie.
Exactly. There's a line from an Akkadian text that reads, May the swift weapon head straight for him, the him being the one who fired it.
There's a great example from the Ahikar literature, which is ancient folklore. It says that shooting an arrow at a righteous man causes God to turn it back upon thee.
It's like a boomerang arrow. The very force you project outward is returned to you with equal impact. The source also mentions the stone. One who rolls a stone, it returns back to him. Imagine pushing a giant boulder up a hill to crush someone below, only to lose your grip and have it roll back over you.
It's Sisyphus meets retribution.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the expert in the source, Lichtenstein, makes a really interesting point here. This isn't cause and effect over lifetimes like in India. This is immediate, ironic, and intensely personal retribution.
The irony is the key part.
It's everything. The punishment fits the crime because the punishment is the crime reversed. It satisfies a very visceral human need for order and for narrative closure. We want to see the mechanism work. We want to see the stone roll back.
There's that dark little proverb about a spider in the Akkadian texts.
Yes, a chilling one. A spider has spun a web for a fly.
Even as a lizard caught the spider.
The very device of entrapment. The web becomes the spider's tomb. The spider thinks it is the master of the web, the apex predator in its little world. But to the lizard, the web just highlights where the snack is.
That is dark. But it really drives the point home about being caught in your own scheme.
It does. It shows that across these ancient cultures, whether it's the Hebrew Bible or Mesopotamian folklore, people were obsessed with the idea that malice is inherently self-destructive. Not just morally, but physically and mechanically. If you build a trap, you are the most likely person to step in it simply because you're the one standing next to it.
Okay, wow. So we have covered a lot of ground here. Let's try to synthesize this before we wrap up. We started with Reddit.
The progressive tax on popularity, the confusing, top-secret, algorithmic karma.
Then we went to India. We saw karma as a natural law in Hinduism, a cosmic bank account to be emptied. We saw Jainism's sticky dust, which I really think is going to stick with me.
A very vivid metaphor.
It is. We saw Sikhism's field of seeds and its radical rejection of caste-based karma. We saw Buddhism's non-linear web, where the present moment is given so much power.
Then we crossed the bridge into the Islamic world with the Sufis, climbing that spiritual ladder from mineral to man, polishing the mirror of the heart until it reflects the divine.
We flowed with the Taoist water, trying not to struggle against the current.
And finally, we ended up in the ancient Near East, watching the biblical stone roll back onto the person who pushed it.
What is the common thread here? Because these systems disagree on almost everything. They disagree on whether there's a God, on what a soul is, on the timeline of reality.
They do. They disagree profoundly on the metaphysics, on the how, but they all seem to agree on the that.
What do you mean?
They all agree that action is not isolated, that causes have effects. Whether it is a digital database, a cosmic law of nature, divine intervention, or simple physics, humanity seems to have this deep-seated, unshakable need to believe that actions matter, that the output eventually equals the input.
We can't accept a universe where things are just random.
It seems not. We need to believe the universe makes sense. We need to know that if we click the upvote button, the number goes up. And if we do good, good eventually happens.
And if we dig a pit, we better watch our step.
Exactly.
So, here's my final thought for you, for everyone listening, to mull over. We started with those Redditors. They're stressing out about their karma score. They're checking the number every day. They're worried about the algorithm.
Karmami. Obsessed with the score.
Right. And then in our deep dive, we saw the Buddhists saying karma isn't a straight line. And the Taoists saying the way is nameless and undefined.
And the original Reddit source explicitly telling us that their karma is not 1.1.
Exactly. It's
Right.
all incredibly complex. So here is the question. If the mechanisms of justice, whether they're algorithmic, spiritual, or philosophical, are this complex and often unknowable, Are we spending too much time trying to keep score?
That's the danger, isn't it? When you focus on the score, you are focusing on the result, on the reward.
Right. Are we acting like those Redditors, obsessing over the number, when we should be focusing on the quality of the action itself, on the deed, the virtue, the intention?
If you're only doing a good deed to increase your Santita account, or to get the upvote, or to avoid the recoiling arrow, have you actually done a good deed?
Or have you just performed a transaction?
You're just interacting with NPCs for XP.
That's the question. The Jain texts say the sticky dust is attracted by the thought, by the passion, not just the final action.
Perhaps the ultimate liberation, whether it's moksha or something else, is when you stop counting the points altogether. You stop looking at the scoreboard.
You just do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
And you just flow, like water.
I like that. So, to everyone listening, go plant some good seeds today. Polish the mirror.
Or at the very least,
Don't dig any pits.
you never know when you might fall in one yourself.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.